listening to the Dwarven Tavern. I am your host, Lyric, and this is Max, my animal companion. And we are going to be talking about feats this time in this beginner's video. What are feats? Well, feats and skills are kind of the same thing, except the way that they are different is that feats, and they can be called attributes and traits and skills depending on what game you're in. I'm going to be using Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 once again as my standard, as my guidelines. Feats are things that your character has the ability to do that they have put an immense amount of work and effort and time into in order to call it a feat. It's something that they have improved their skills upon so much that it's a very specific thing, first off, and it's also something that is extremely beneficial. For example, a character can have the feat of, say, Iron Will. They have worked on their willpower for such a long time, and sometimes making it more distinct, willpower and things like that, like reflexes and willpower. Sometimes feats can be an innate ability that they have branched out on, but chances are they have branched out on it. They have practiced, they have studied, they have researched, and they've expanded those skills that they naturally have to create feats. And what I was saying is that Iron Will is it's like a +2 for your will saves and things like that, so that you can, when it comes to situations where you need willpower, you're more likely to convince yourself that you don't need or do need that certain thing. For example, if an evil mage or chaotic sorcerer or whatever casts a spell on you saying that you want to kill your friends, or you need to eat that thing that'll kill you, or you need to just stand and watch your city burn, that extra 2 points would add to your roll, so therefore you would be able to, you know, do the thing or not do the thing. So skills are, going back to my skills beginner's video, that was a you have a set list of determined skills that add to your character's abilities. They are things that your character practiced on. They're things that your character knows. But at the same time, over time, these skills can be added to. These skills can be expanded upon. These skills can be defined by your character class, but at the same time they can also be researched and practiced in game, so that your character who normally wouldn't have these skills has them. Feats are kind of the same way, except there is no defining feat for any one character class or race. There are feats that are given to certain character classes and certain races that can be in the racial bonuses, but at the same time those are kind of extra and don't necessarily take away the first class feat bonus that automatically comes with every character. That's with Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. It might be a little different depending on your game system. Please look into it if I'm wrong, and please comment below to add on to it if you need to. So, why are feats important? Like I said, they are skills with more and more practice, and the reason that they are important is that they add to your character. They just expand your character's personality, your character's background, your character's abilities, even further than just laying out skills and traits, which are, or not traits, but stats, charisma, strength, dexterity, constitution, yada yada. Those are the basics of your character, and then everything from that point on is expanding on those things. So feats is an expansion on an expansion. They take your skills, they take your traits, they take your stats all into consideration when they come about, and then they add back to those things. For example, you could have self-sufficient as a feat, and that gives you a +2 to heal and survival checks, which is your skills. Or even more basic than that, basic-er is what I was going to say, you can have Iron Will, as I mentioned, and that gives you a +2 to your will saves. So it adds to even, like, will, reflex, and fortitude saves. I'm pretty sure Iron Stomach gives you a +2 to your fortitude save. Or your +2 to your constitution. There are some feats that can add directly to your natural stats, but those are very far and few between. I mixed that up, but I don't care. And you can use them to expand your character's abilities and those things. For example, you could have a character that is super strong. All they care about is working up their beef, and that means that they are a worshiper of Cord, and they are focused on their physical abilities, so you might want to give them skills and feats that align with that thought. That also kind of plays into the character's weaknesses as well, in that by only focusing on their strength, they are neglecting their other traits. And therefore, when it comes to feats, you would have to pick out specific ones, and that would neglect and, you know, give you a weakness. So your strength is also your weakness, which is, that's very punny in that example. So, there are also feats like Toughness, which gives you a +3 to your hit points. So that's just a broad spectrum of just like, bam, there it is. And I personally used Toughness as one of my character's feats, and it was the only thing that kept my character alive. A lot of people think that Toughness is kind of just kind of a weak feat to choose from. They're kind of useless. It's only 3 hit points, and when you're higher level, that doesn't really matter. My character, my monk, Akathan, did not have a lot of hit points when he was first, second, and third level. He was very focused on his ability to block attacks and to not do anything offensive. So when the things came to offense, he was unable to counterattack and therefore lost hit points very quickly. For example, one time he lost most of his hit points was when he got hit by the rebound of a Minotaur skeleton's axe. And that was that, and he was down for the entire fight. It was the first round, and he got hit in the right here in his body parts, and he was out, and that was it, and he almost died. And then the next fight, the same thing happened, but with something different, because they hit this part of his body and did twice damage because it was to an open wound. And then the third time, that same gaming session, he passed out. So when he leveled up, because he didn't level up from any of those fights, I gave him Toughness, and then the next fight that he was in, he was dropped down to, I think, 5 hit points. Or not even that, I think he was 2 hit points. And it was because he had that Toughness skill. If he didn't have it, then he would only have -2 hit points and would be down. For 3.5, when you reach -10, you die. So he was very close to dying. And that Toughness feat saved his life because he earned it by having those experiences his first level. So it was a practice skill in that it was kind of an in the field type of practice. So there are a lot of feats that can be used for, and I have the player's handbook here for my guidance. You have feats that can be used to expand on your character. You have feats that can be used to help your character as they level up. I like to base my feats off of their experiences as they go along, not so much as the character that I want them to be. For example, Akathan needing the Toughness feat, even though I wanted him to be a character who was passive, so he did eventually kind of build himself a shield of tough skin. Another way to look at it is a character, if you want a rogue to be super sneaky, and you want a rogue to be super stubborn and cunning and all that stuff, the classic kind of stereotypical rogue, then you probably want to go with, like, Iron Will. I keep using that as an example because it's a very nice example. You might want to have a feat that goes along the lines of a rogue. Let me give you an example. Actually, the only rogue that I ever played well was a half-orc rogue, of course, and he was not about that sneaky life. So you might want to get dodge, which has a prerequisite, because some feats have prerequisites, of a dexterity of 13. And this gives you a +1 dodge bonus to AC against select target. So, and then that can be expanded upon as well. So you might want to give your rogue that feat when they first start out, and then you realize your rogue is more of a bard, or you realize your rogue is more of the abrasive type, and that the sneaky life doesn't suit them, very much like my half-orc character, Buduk. And then you want to expand upon that character rather than expand upon the character that you originally had. And feats is a great way to do that because they are so specific, they point you in the same direction, in a completely different direction, I should say, than the one that you were going in the first place. A great way to test this out is I had a character who was a twin, and they were identical up until their feats because they had different interests, and those different feats completely changed the dynamic of the game and completely changed the fact that they were twins and made them more like acquaintances than brothers who grew up together. And I found that to be very, very fun, very, very interesting, and you can try it out for yourself. So, in my skills video, I covered the non-traditional way to use skills. Skills are lined out in the book, but there's a lot more vagueness to them than feats. There's a lot more wiggle room that you can use skills to do certain things. They give you a description and not necessarily bonuses. And that's because you add the bonuses yourself. You get skill points as you play the game, and feats don't have that. So, how can you use feats in a non-traditional way? And the answer is you really can't. You have to think long and hard on it, and you have to come up with these specific situations, and you might not realize the specific situation until you're in it yourself, in-game. And feats, unlike skills, have predetermined points that you have, and you have to use those points rather than being able to determine like 1 through 8, which you can use in the first level. For example, when it comes to skills versus feats, you can use, say, tumble, which is kind of like you just somersault. It's an acrobatic fall, is what you could say it is. It's a practiced fall so that you don't hurt yourself when you land. For example, like if you look up any parkour video, they sometimes roll when they land, and that's to distribute the force of impact. And that is called a tumble. They have the tumble skill, if you want to put it in D&D terms. And you can use that for pretty much any situation on which you are falling, which you are trying to get to one point or another, and dodge at the same time. You don't necessarily need the dodge feat, which is a feat, and that gives you the ability to dodge any one opponent. So, that being said, the dodge feat is not a tumbling thing. It is not a falling thing. It's dodging an oncoming onslaught of any sort of missile weapons or melee weapons that could harm your character from this one character, this one opponent that they are facing. So skills have more wiggle room than feats do, in that they can be used in non-traditional ways, while feats mostly can't. They kind of give you a distinct number, they give you a distinct amount of points that you can use for these things, a distinct bonus to a certain trait, feat, stat, attribute, skill that allows you to do something that you already can do better. And I think that's what feats are versus skills. Skills is the ability that you have practiced for a long time, that you have studied, that you have done, that you have researched, and feats are those skills and then some. They are practiced skills. They are abilities that you have expanded upon that you already had. And I think that's the best way to describe it. So, there aren't really many non-traditional uses for feats, and if they are very few and far between, and they are in kind of very specific situations, and it's kind of hard to decipher when those things are, so use your decipher skill. To use them, they, pretty much all you need to do is just add them to your character, and then you can kind of just forget about them. More often than not. Sometimes there are feats that are situational, like you're able to dodge this one opponent, you're able to hit this one opponent, you're able to read this certain personality better than another. And it's really, you gotta remind yourself to use those abilities sometimes, so it's kind of hard to keep track of them all. But more often than not, they're straight-laced, they are lined out for you as clearly as day. You put them on your character sheet, and then you forget about them. You're able to use this amount of attacks, you're able to use this amount of weapons, you're able to do this amount of things. You have this many skill points, this many hit points, this many reflex saves, and so on and so forth. And it's kind of lined out for you, and you just have to decide which one would suit your character best. There are very few feats when it comes to comparing them with skills. Skills, you have a distinct amount depending on what your character is, who they are, and what their job is. And you can expand upon that as you go along. You can spend experience points, I believe, to have a certain amount of skill points added to your character. And I think the same thing can happen to your feats. You can spend a certain amount of skill points, or not skill points, but experience points to have more feats if you need more feats to expand that character to the person that you want them to be. But at the same time, you have to remember that they are going in their own direction, and that might not be something that you have control over. So spending experience points on feats, while that is cool and fun, you might not want to overdo it. And you might want to keep their character in mind, keep who they are in mind. I'm talking characters and personality, not character as in what's on the paper. And remember that they are important. They can help your character out. They might be that saving grace that keeps your character alive, like it was for me. It might be that last thread that keeps your character sane and safe and, you know, keeps them on to the next campaign. So remember that they are important, they are useful, and that they can add to your character depth. So, that's my 2 cents. This was the beginner's video on feats. If you have any suggestions on another beginner's video on another topic that you would like to see in a Dwarven Tavern talk, if you have any review material that you would like to send us our way, please send it to us. But if you have any comments, any suggestions, any questions, anything, please pay those 2 cents to the bartender below in the comments section. We would be happy to read it, and we would be happy to get back to it and maybe even make a video about it. Who knows? We'll see. And that is that for this video. So, I am Lyric, and on behalf of the entire cast and crew of the Dwarven Tavern, we wish for you to want for nothing but adventure, and at first I feared it, then I charged. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.